Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to the Resilience Resourcing Podcast. This is a connection space where badass women share their real on their way to resilience. Each week, I have the pleasure of spotlighting women dominating in a diverse landscape of fields ranging from performance neurotraining to film and all in between. You will get to know the unique qualities these women each carry and how connecting with these empowering women's stories bring about camaraderie and in turn empower you towards your unique dreams and goals. Resilience Resourcing was created to be a platform from which to share resources for resilience with those who may not otherwise have access to them. The first step in resourcing is connection. Through connection, we gain knowledge and access to empowering resources. This is the hope with each podcast I share, to bring you closer to empowering resources that will transform the way you think and feel about yourself and raise funds to share resources with those who may not be able to afford them. Is there any advice you would give for someone who might be in the middle of a really hard time, kind of in a crossroads of, I'm going through a lot of things and I'm learning a lot, but I feel like I can't get out. I feel like I'm stuck in whatever situation it is. Maybe it's domestic violence, maybe it's, going through their own addictions. What would you advise for that next step to kind of get them to where they can start experiencing resilience as well?
Well, I'm pretty partial with the brain spotting, essentially. So yeah, getting yourself into therapy. Therapy works. We just know that. Even talk therapy works. I'm very partial to the reprocessing because the answers are within you, right? Mm-hmm. You just need to be reconnected back up. We have a lot of wisdom in us, and through trauma, we begin to kind of create a distorted reality, a distorted view. It just makes us more hypervigilant. It makes us more pessimistic. It makes us just kind of worried all the time, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be hurt again. And so you start to find that people are, you start to reprocess some of the trauma, and you start to come back to more of a balanced state of not being as fearful, not being as apprehensive, not feeling as dooms, all's lost, doomsday, no motivation. So I really like the trauma reprocessing therapy. I find it to be very effective. I know that EMDR is, I know that hypnotherapy is, I know that somatic experience is. Like, each of these things on their own are very effective. So if you can't get to a brain spotter, then one of those on their own, and then shifting to the other one or something of that nature. And neuro-linguistic programming, I've done some training in that, and done some training in hypnotherapy as well. So they all provide aspects that can assist you in moving forward, reaching another level. Because that's the thing, you know, to think that, okay, I've worked out one time, or I've done therapy one time, now I'm good forever. Health is we are constantly declining no matter what. You know, we're in a tear down, rebuild process. So thinking about it in that way, that this is healing and growth is all interly connected, and it's kind of exciting. You know, when I hear of new things, I think, wow, I want to try that. Ooh, what next level can I get to with my health? Can I feel better? Because you can always reach this other level of contentment and this solid, grounded energy, right?
Yeah.
I do yoga, I exercise, I do it all. I do acupuncture, I do chiropractor, I do massage. I love it all, and it all shifts your nervous system to a greater balanced state. And so looking at it more of this excitement of getting to try, getting to achieve, getting to see, as opposed to this like, oh my gosh, I have all this work to do. Oh, I'm just this. It's like, no, it's like every single thing you do is going to make you feel better. And that's what self-care, you know, people talk about self-care, and I get so like, well, it's not just like laying down and binge watching TV. Perhaps if you need to rest, yes, but it's work. It's getting to do this work that is so enriching and takes you to a next level, and allows for, you know, your interpersonal relationships to grow, having better relationships with a partner, having better relationships with your children, being a better parent, or enjoying it more, shall we say. And then, you know, just like with anything, once the brain and body does it once, it knows how to do it again. So even with brain spotting, you know, I do maintenance. I do 2 sessions a month. I trade with another sports psych, and so we work on each other because we want to clean up our energy, and we're taking on all of our clients' trauma, because that's just how our brain lays down networks. Like when we see tragic things, our body kind of takes in unconsciously that could happen to us.
Yeah.
So it's constantly this process of just detraining and deconditioning, so that we're in this calm, cool, collected, confident, composed state. So it's this maintenance work all the time. And even with the brain spotting, I do some self-spotting, as I'll listen to the bilateral sound for like 10 minutes a day and kind of take stock of, well, this was stressful, oh, this was sad, and just kind of releasing it and checking in with my body.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, but it is a good work, because it's a growth mindset, and you're constantly building and building and getting healthier and better, and by doing that, you have more to offer other people, because you're doing it for yourself, and then you learn more to help others. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk next time. Thank you.
You know, for me specifically, the messages I was telling myself were a lie. And I learned those from somewhere. And so what I did was, when I went to jail this last time, I recognized that those patterns and were destructive, and that those messages were a lie, and that I had gotten them from somewhere else. And then I started to tell myself those things. And so I said to myself, well, if I can tell myself things that weren't true and then believe them, why can't I do the same thing to turn around the message? So that's what I did, and I made this list, and I was facing my 4th prison sentence, and I sat in jail for a number of months, and I started to read myself this list of things that I did not believe about me, because I felt like I was despicable. I felt like I had become the lowest of the low, and that there was absolutely no way I was going to be able to recover from the things that I had done to myself, my family, and the people in my life. However, I was not dying, and trust me, I gave it my all. I tried everything in my power to take myself out. So when I was arrested, in which for me it was really simple. I was comfortable if somebody came and killed me, which the person I was married to at the time definitely gave it his best shot. I was fine if I succeeded in a suicide attempt, which I gave that my best shot. And unfortunately, every stinking time I ever tried, I woke up in the ICU or something like that, which I was very angry about, or I could be arrested. Any of those 3 options was fine with me. I just wanted it to stop. I could not stop on my own. And that's where my addiction took me. It took me to a place where I had absolutely no control over my compulsion and obsession to use. And so even though I knew inside that I did not want to be using, and once I started I couldn't stop, I I was like, all right, and I was trying to work it out with my higher power to have one of those things happen. And so, as always, I was arrested, and thankfully so. And so I made the decision, even though I was still trying to get out of jail because I didn't really want to be there, right? Because I'm an addict, and the addict inside of me is really big, especially when there is recent drug use. The addict inside of me sort of battles the spiritual side of me, you know, the actual me that's in there. It's overshadowed by this really big beast. And so there was a lot of, you know, conflicting stuff going on inside. As much as I knew I needed to be where I was, I also did not want to stay in jail because jail sucks. Jail's uncomfortable, and I can't get what I want when I'm in jail. I can't meet my fleshly or, you know, superficial needs, right? But what was happening for me is that my spiritual and in-depth needs were actually being cared for. And so I knew that I hated myself, and I knew that was a huge part of the problem, and I knew that I needed to turn that around if I was going to try to succeed. And so that's what I did, and I wrote this big list of stuff that I thought were lies, and I started to say them to myself in my face, out loud. Initially, it started one time a day, and then it went to twice a day, until I started to treat myself differently. By no means have I gotten to the place where I think I'm amazing. I wonder what the heck is going on with people. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I am just a dope fiend that is working her way into trying to be somebody different. And so it's been kind of baffling, the response from the posts that went viral and all of these different media, all this different media coverage. And but I also recognize when I hear the things that people are saying to me is that my story gives people hope.
I feel like I probably had God in a box my whole life. And I finally let God out. And I think I'm being taught that God is love, like unrestrained love. And I feel that God's love was mentioned through my upbringing, again, by all of the systems that taught me and raised me in the faith. But God's anger and God's wrath,
It was taught more almost.
was shoved down your throat.
Yep.
So I grew up feeling shame my whole life. Now, I was loved. I never doubted my parents' love. They raised me so amazing, so much better than they were raised. Like, thank you, Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But again, this isn't just my parents, it's the whole system that interworks, you know? You can listen to something on the Christian radio, and that can put shame on you, right? I feel like, so the LGBTQ issue, the abortion issue, like, that's huge for me, because it's the only situation where you're controlling somebody's body. And if we look at the statistics and how abortion is decreased, if you really want less abortions, banning abortion isn't the rule. It's not the loving thing to do. It's not I think we grew up very binary. There's right and wrong. And a quick fix or an easy fix. And as I've learned as an adult, it's all so complicated, or else it'll be fixed already, you know? And so I don't think our stance, and when I say our, like, if I say I'm a Christian and dude over here on Facebook who's being a complete jerk says he's a Christian too, even though I might be like, he has nothing to do with me, if you're not a Christian and you're looking at people, you're going to associate us together. And that might not be fair, but it's what it is. And you and I have no control over that. And so when people, even if it's not my exact church or this exact pastor, say those kinds of things, it's so unloving and it's so harmful. And so there's just so many things. I also think that going to church in the actual building is just not for me. It's not my thing. But I remember hearing growing up, oh, well, so-and-so goes fishing every Sunday and they think that they're connected with Jesus there. And it was in a very judgmental tone. I couldn't even tell you who said it. I just know an adult in my earshot said it.
And that made you think that
And right there, I thought, they're judging that person. That person's not good enough. So now when I hear that, but all of our systems, church, school, they're designed for one type of person, right?
Abled body,
Right.
white.
Yeah. I have a kid who was challenged growing up, has learning disabilities. Traditional school doesn't work for her, and that's not her fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a system set up there in school, but like, why would we think that one size fits all for everybody?
Yeah.
And so what just even in the last few weeks, have come to my thing right now that my brain is chewing over the most is when I stop and look, we as Christians, I feel, have focused so much on heaven and getting people saved that we have forgotten about love.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
And if the Bible is what we're going to go by, and Jesus asked what's the greatest commandment, and it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, body, spirit, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's where I have to start, and everything else. I'm going to work the rest of my life to do this well, and I'm going to screw up so much that I don't have time to fight with you about anything else. And I don't want to fight with people. I want to love people.
Then things got rough, and then we ended up breaking up. And that was probably one of the hardest things for me ever. Like, I can talk about how I go on adventures and I'm independent and this, that, and the other thing, but like that really hurt me.
Wow.
So that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever gone through.
What about
it was said I love you too, and then it was over. So
wow.
So
wow. Yeah, I want to know.
But I tried, so when I was there, I was miserable. I ended up, getting essentially kicked out of the house I was living in. And I had my sailboat to stay on, but it didn't have a shower and stuff. So that was not ideal. And I stayed with a friend in Napa who had a spare room. So I was staying with her while I tried to figure out what I was doing. But that's when I kind of realized that in California, I was commuting 2 hours to work. I was working a job that was not fulfilling at all. And I wasn't making enough money to like ever buy a house in California, or really, like I could have gotten a studio apartment or something because it's so expensive. Yeah. So I was like, I don't have a good place to live. I don't like the job I'm in. A lot of my social group disappeared because, I had a couple of my own friends, but a lot of my friends were his like friends, girlfriends, and wives.
Yeah.
So I was very isolated and didn't really know what I was doing with my life. So that was a hard point. I tried to find a therapist, and that actually was one of the most stressful situations. They need to make mental health actually available. I couldn't find one. It was like my insurance wouldn't cover people. Nobody was accepting patients. It was like...
That is a big reason why I'm doing this. Because mental health, first of all, a good therapist is expensive, and unless you have good insurance, you can't get the good therapists.
Yep.
And the cutting edge therapy that actually works, that's like the best, is like for rich people. Like,
yeah,
it's impossible. And I know there is, again, I don't get paid for this is no ad, but Cerebral is something that is a new, like, online, you can do therapy through them. I don't know enough to know if I would recommend it because I have honestly never done it. I know somebody who tried it, I think, because you can do like psychiatrists, you can do anything through them. And it's supposed to be somewhat affordable. But therapy changed my life because of my traumatic brain injury and the light therapy and things that I've had to do to get my brain functioning, and then getting a second concussion. And so it, thankfully my therapist does what do you call it? Virtual. She did it before COVID. She's always done virtual or in office, but that is something I really want everyone to have access to. So, thank you for sharing that vulnerability, because I think that is something that, it can get to a point for people where it is a life or death thing if they can't find the help they need. So, that's the goal here, is to share the real so that people can see hey, like this is a part of life, that it doesn't matter how badass you are. Everybody has mental health times and goes through lows where our mental and physical, it's this, our body, we need both. So
And I think as resilient as you are and as strong as you are, everybody needs some help sometimes. Like you get into these spirals going down and it's like, it's hard to climb out by yourself.
I'm an overachiever, so everything I do, I have to be the best at it. Like that's how I think.
yeah.
So Christianity was just the same thing. Like it was like, oh, I'm a Christian now. I'm gonna be the best Christian ever. So I just threw everything into it and just, I left it off. It was good that I left it behind though, because eventually I would have got found out. Like I was hanging around killers,
Yeah.
like they were real.
Yeah.
And when you're next to someone that's real, you quickly can surmise whether or not you're the authentic thing or not. So like if you're somebody who's just a talker and you hang out with a doer, you're gonna quickly find out that you're the talker. Like you think you're the doer, but you're just the talker.
Yeah.
So when I was hanging out with the thugs, they had zero remorse, zero, like there's no thought in anyone else's feelings. Whereas I would rob somebody and then feel hella bad afterwards. I would feel so bad. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure this isn't how thugs are supposed to feel. We're supposed to be kind of hard and stuff. And so I quickly knew, oh man, I'm probably not, this isn't the life that I was cut out for. So I was in that place where I was like, man, I need to figure out a way to get out. Luckily, church came along and it was something that I could dive into. And I think the first year or two was more like a popularity thing, like I got into it and I was already popular. So it didn't really like affect me too much. People were just like, oh, okay, cool. He's a Christian now. But it was in that first 2 years that I realized, oh, you can't just get by on popularity with Christianity. Like you actually have to read the word, you have to pray, you have to do all this stuff and get to know who God is. And then solidify your faith, where I was just kind of like, I'm cool, I'm a Christian. And you know what I'm saying? So once I got into it, I just went 100%. I don't do anything half. I can't do anything halfway. Cause again, like I'm a doer. I'm not a talker and I can't be around talkers.
To a lot of people, even to myself at times, it becomes more about popularity and how cool, what group you're in. It can become that before it really is something that's deeper for you. I
think that's just humanity, to be honest. I don't know if that's necessarily like the way we do church now, because it's so different than how it was done. It's almost like impossible to not fall into that way of thinking. And it's not even on purpose. It's just America does it a certain type of way where it's like it's easy to idolize pastors. It's easy to become trendy with it. It's just it's different in other parts of the world, like the way they do church. So it's kind of like it's what it is. It's our culture. We do everything like this. It's like, what don't we do like this? Who don't we prop up? Like the church in the country feels like the president is the most powerful person in the world, and then everybody behind the scenes know that he's not the most powerful person in the world because he has to, go through all these checks and balances, and there's only so many things he can do. And when a country is in debt to a bank, the country isn't the powerful thing, the bank is. So when you got us lending from the reserve or from the people who actually have the money and we're borrowing it, like you would start thinking like, man, we're not really the powerful ones. They're the ones that are lending us money. We can't do anything without money. But we prop this guy up. We prop the president up. Church expects the president to actually be like the church leader, which is so stupid to me. I'm like, I just don't understand why when voting season comes around, the church gets so crazy, as if the president was meant to lead us. We're no longer in the Old Testament. He's not the king of our Israel. Like, the president is the president. He looks out for our interest. And when America's interest is money and power, how in the hell do you think that's going to align with the Bible? It's just not.
Remember, Josh and I were going to go to Ocean Shores. We were on our way there and the car overheated or something, and we were like, okay, we'll just go home. Obviously, we're not supposed to go. So we get home, and I say, I'm going to go to the grocery store so I can cook us dinner. And then it was like a blackout. The next thing I remember is I'm on the other side of a 5-story balcony, and I'm freaked out because it's like I came to, and I crawl over, fall to the ground, call my best friend at the time, and I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. This is what happened. It takes 2 days to check me into a mental hospital. I went to 3 different hospitals, and they were all busy or full. So they said, go home, we'll call you when we have room. Well, for somebody who didn't even know they were suicidal, clearly has some imbalances going on, that was the worst thing that could have happened to me. Talked to 3 different social workers, and they're all like, well, it seems like you're okay now. I said, oh, but I didn't think something was wrong.
Yeah,
so why did I do this?
Yeah, what's going on?
So we went back to the hotel, and I asked, like, when did I check in? When did this happen? They're like, you were really distraught. We thought maybe you were trying to get away from an abuser, so we put you up in the room and didn't ask any questions. And I was like, wow. Like, if I hadn't have come to, as I put it, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the time, my husband didn't understand, and he was just like, how selfish. Like, what are you trying to get away from? I don't remember. And then they put me at the UW psych ward, and I'm there for 4 days getting intensive therapy, and they discharge me and say, it's just hormones, go home, it'll eventually rebalance. With no help.
I don't even know where to start, but I'm just going to interject here. That is why I'm so passionate about resilience resourcing and getting resources that people need for mental health out there, and knowledge, experiences that are really happening, and the resources that people can be connected with that actually do help people in those situations, instead of just throwing them out to this giant organization. And I'm not putting down social workers or people that are in that, because it's a very tough field, but our system, there's a lot of messed up. And, you know, it takes things like this and people speaking up in these kind of ways for them to find out, you know, that there are other resources and try to make change. And so you're a really big part of that happening. That's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, it's a very disrupted system. I sought out quite a few therapists. I found one that had, you know, specialized in medical trauma and PTSD. I went to him thinking, like, this is the answer, I'm gonna be fixed. I tell him everything that happened, and he said, it seems like you're an attention seeker. And that's what we need to focus on.
You don't even remember.
Yeah, I don't remember. So I left there bawling and thought, this is it. This is the rest of my life. This is what it's going to be like. I'm going to be sick, and I'm going to be panicked all the time that I'm not going to know what's going to happen. It took months, I don't know, maybe a year before I found a specialist, an endocrinologist, who kind of went over all my labs with me. And, you know, you can have as much medical knowledge as you want, but when you're going through something personally, there is this disconnect. Because I grew up in nursing my whole life. I worked in hospice, I did all these things. But for myself, I could not separate the mental from the emotional enough to, like, go, this is what's happening on your labs, this is what's relating to what's happening to you physically. It was all just so much at one time that I couldn't process it.
Probably more afraid of what my Christian friends would think, because I know that, I came from a pretty conservative background, and I remember there just being so much kind of shaming around, and even myself, I remember being quite judgmental, and I have to, fight off judgment all the time about like what's like right and wrong and good and bad and like healthy and unhealthy, and like recognizing like, okay, like everybody's on their own journey is what's really helped me have a lot more grace for just like, it's none of my business, you know. But
We could all tell ourselves that more often.
Yeah, that's
None of my
really
business.
yeah, that was one of the best things I think God taught me. It was like, Ari, you know, what people are thinking about you, it's none of your business. And I was like, oh my gosh, but how can I please them? How can I make sure that I'm doing the right thing, that if they're not happy with me, you know? And he's like, it's none of your business what they think. And I was like, oh, that's so painful, because I'm like, I'm such a people pleaser, and I struggle to like not perform, you know. And so I knew coming here that was going to literally stab that over and over and over again, because there's nobody in Hollywood that can please every single audience, every single member all the time. Like you'll look at some of the ones that we just super highly respect, and it's like, oh, well, they had a sex scene, or oh, they did this, or oh, they compromised here, or they gave in there, or they did, you know, slept with this person to get that job. And it's like it's just a city filled with like, you know, kiss ups and compromisers, and it's like, it's so easy to do that. And I've been literally a part of that scenario, where I remember I booked a movie where I was like, oh, I really want to do, I booked this audition, and this guy was like, okay, cool. You got the part, but there's going to be like some nudity. And I was like, oh, and I mean, some people would say, oh, you didn't compromise, but I was like, no, I compromised because I didn't fully stick up for myself. I kind of weaseled my way out of the role, versus being just able to say, you know, I'm sorry, that kind of goes against my standards, and I don't want to do that. I blamed it on my manager, which is fun. But I was like, ultimately, you want to be able to say like, and the guy, he kind of shamed and threatened me afterwards too, where he was saying, this director, he was like, you know, Ari, I don't know if you're going to be able to work, you know, if you aren't willing to do this kind of stuff, you're not going to be able to get other jobs. And I remember being like, is that a threat? Like, no, Satan, I don't think so, you know.
Go away
like,
from me, Satan.
I know, but there was so many, and I remember feeling super scared, because I booked this other film. This was a short film early on in my career, and I was like, oh, here it comes. But I had a kissing scene, and I hadn't kissed anybody yet. And I remember, this was for a music video, and I had, and the short film. I'll tell you both stories. But I remember thinking like, oh, people are going to judge me for that, because they know that I'm kind of saving my kiss for my husband one day. And I was like, I just don't see it as the same thing. Like, I think that one is fake and one is real.
One is real.
So
yeah,
I, like,
I think
I'm going to do that. I know, it's like, but not everybody has to agree. And the point is, it's none of my business if everybody agrees. It's just about what is the conviction that I'm feeling. Do I feel permission to do this or not? And so, but one of my roles, I remember being super nervous about. I called my dad almost crying, and I called my manager like really nervous. And I remember being like, okay, I have this, I'm literally on set, and I didn't realize this, which is, you know, a big mistake. They should definitely have told me about that beforehand. And this happens a lot in Hollywood, where they don't tell you till you're in the moment, and then you feel like you can't say no. But I remember being in the set, and they're like, and believe it or not, it's like a Christian director, and it was a totally harmless film, but I was super like in this innocence, like, oh my gosh, we're still my people pleasing, like, gotta make the masses still feel safe, like the Christian masses, not, you know, be upset with me. So I'm playing this role. It's kind of she's a homewrecker basically, but she doesn't know it. And the guy is sleeping with her. And there's a scene where we're in a bed together.
I remember being like, I think I've seen it.
Yes, you have probably. And I was like, oh, I'm so nervous. I was like, I was like, people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, she's buckled. She's definitely given over. And the guy's like, you can be totally comfortable. You can wear shorts. You can literally wear a t-shirt. You don't have to wear anything sexy. And another funny story on that set. But I remember calling my dad and being like, Dad, I don't know if should I do this role? He's like, how, do you feel comfortable? Like, are they making you feel uncomfortable? Are you wearing anything that makes you feel uncomfortable? I was like, no, it's kind of professional, but I was like,
wow.
Well, yeah, because I think that, and I love what you're doing, Holly, because it's bringing awareness, right? And there's a lot of people who don't understand their own pain. Let alone anyone else's, right?
And they project it. They cause more pain because they project it versus working on it.
even in my experience, even professionals who are in the counseling field
Oh yeah.
Do damage.
Oh yes.
They
I
cause
have heard that
by not really
time of
fully
day.
understanding.
Yep. They're not
Yeah.
doing the work. My therapist actually has said this multiple times. Do not trust a therapist who's not doing the work themselves, who
Yes.
doesn't see a therapist on their own time and
Yes.
does their own work, because it doesn't matter who you are. You have to work through your own stuff. And if you're not, you're going to be projecting that on other people.
Yes. As part of my problem currently with how some counseling is going, because it's insurance has pushed it into the medical model where you have to use things like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy, things that have a timeline. You have 8 weeks to fix this person's problem, but you're not doing that with that. You're giving them some tools for their toolbox, but you can't restore a person who has deep emotional wounds in 8 weeks. I'm sorry, it just can't be done.
No, and I think a lot of science and things are showing that those models aren't as effective.
Yes.
And I think, I don't know if you heard of the holistic psychologist at all.
I love the holistic psychologist.
Yeah, I'm huge on her.
Me
And
too.
that's where things are going in a
Yes.
lot of ways. And as somebody who, I know you have your bachelor's, or you almost finished with your master's, or you're working on it basically.
I'm working on my master's, although that's where some of the big changes I was mentioning before are coming.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult time for school for sure, because I think a lot of things are changing.
Yes. And so my original path, after my divorce in my 40s, I decided that it was time to follow my dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be an art therapist. That was when I reconnected with my art, when I was at a point in my healing journey with my therapy path and all that I finally found the confidence to go back to school. I went to Marylhurst University. And
where's that?
It was in Lake Oswego, Oregon. It was a 130-year-old institution. It was a Catholic university, had been a private women's Catholic university, and then in the late 60s, early 70s, it opened up to all persons, and then developed into a liberal arts college. And yeah, was still run by the lovely nuns. Essentially, they ran the property and had a lot of influence on the school, but it was a secular school. It wasn't a religious school.
Yeah.
But I would go so far as to say it was a place of great spiritual healing.
Wow.
And I had a wonderful experience at that college. The entire staff and anyone having to do with that school, they were all focused on healing people, systems, the planet. It was a beautiful experience. And I got an interdisciplinary bachelor's, which means I couldn't make up my mind on what I wanted to study, basically. And so my degree is in psychology, communications, interpersonal neurobiology, and fine art.
That is really cool, though. Those things I feel like go together in a lot of ways that people might not even think.
Yes. Well, so I got to self-design.
Stay tuned for next episodes on www.resilienceresourcing.com.